Hello, and welcome to the 10th podcast in a series sponsored by Hope House, a facility helping people deal with trauma, grief, and unresolved issues. Today, my guests are Dr. Mike Swadowick and Chase Heidner, and they're going to specifically talk about post-traumatic growth, recovery, what is being strong, what does that mean, and a couple other concepts which we think will help the audience today. So, Mike, please take it away.
Hello, everybody. Last time we were here, we were talking about post-traumatic growth recovery, and there was an inventory sheet, and I was reviewing the inventory sheet, and it reminded me of Chase's comment as we were finishing up last time about being strong. One of the roads to recovery is, she said, I've always been strong, or alluded to the fact that her strength helped her get through this traumatic incident in her life. And I wondered to myself, because we didn't have time to get into it, what does growth or strength look like to you?
So I think that's a really great question. I don't think it's a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a process. In the beginning of grief, I believe being strong would be, getting up out of bed, or whatever that may look like for you yourself, the individual. What is the strongest factor that you're trying to overcome in this moment of grief? But also in my mind, there has to be a progress point, a time where you have to get to the next step of strength, right? Getting out of bed, whether it be or getting yourself to work or to class, completing an assignment, not lashing out in your emotions, just regaining control of everything that was out of your control.
And when you said that, so far, every single article I've read, not every single article I've read articles about putting a time frame. Well, after a year, you should feel better. After 6 months, you should feel better. I don't know if that is a more untrue statement
I think that's the problem with linear thinking. People think A to B to C to D, which does not work with trauma or grief, because if you look at it as a progression, you're going to fall back every now and then. It's going to be like a spiral back. Some trigger, you'll be at a party and everything's going great, but something will trigger a memory in you, then you just regress a little bit. So I think part of it is people really need to look at that linear component and realize that you don't heal that way.
I agree, and it's the metaphor I'm thinking of when you said that is, I've been dieting for I think 20 years now, and when you read about diets, one of the things I read was, one day if you eat 5 pizzas and 12 donuts because you just regress for that day, doesn't mean it's over. Doesn't mean you need to quit dieting. I can't do it. That's just going to happen, just like we talked about with trauma. There's days you're just going to flat out be sad. And when I asked you about strength, my model of strength, what comes to mind is my mom, because in both ways, there's a yin and a yang to that, because she survived. She tried to be a mom of 4 and then later on 5 kids. And, what does strength mean? I'm thinking about her. Does that mean you don't cry when everybody around you is crying? Does that mean you get up and say, quit it? When, the room is blue, you can feel the energy of the room being so down. That was my interpretation of strength. And you defined it in a better way. I don't know if getting back into a routine is the right word I'm using, but getting out of bed, learning how to take care of yourself so you don't try to medicate the grief away. That would be strength, or going to see a therapist, joining a therapy group could be showing strength, because you're right, that is a process, and it's not going to come overnight. And I don't know if people get impatient with the people, or grieving people get impatient with the process, but it just does it takes time.
And it does, and I don't want to be confused with the linear process. And, of course you fall back. Mm-hmm. Can I actually, because sometimes strength can just be another day or another season. Can I actually read a poem that I had written?
Please do.
Because it also talks about how, good and then the bad, good and the bad. And sorry, I'm kind of like a dark writer, even though that's just internal sometimes. But this was kind of as I was processing my grief. It's the world. This is how it starts. I don't have a title. The world had twisted into an angry storm and started turning in the opposite direction. Everything thereon after thundered into a hurricane of firsts. A first sunset too bright for the dark night. A first shower, a first meal, a first hug held too long and too tight. A first memory, a first nightmare, a first full night of sleep. A first week, a first month, a first Christmas, a first day to the new year. A first time searching for answers at the bottom of an empty bottle. A first snowfall, a first birthday, a first change of the season's leaves, a first smile, a first laugh, a first day with no tears, a first day, a first week, a first month, a first year. I've survived 1,000 firsts, all entangled inside a black hole of survivor's guilt. And even after all of these firsts, it is the memory of all of our lasts that'll bring me to my knees.
Did you write
Outstanding. Number one, it proves a point we talked about a couple podcasts ago. You're not the same person who you were. This grief, the trauma changes that. And number two, that's in my mind, one of the top healing modalities a person can do is either journaling. You journaled in terms of a poem. That could be a book or a short story or a doctoral dissertation. Tremendous. And I've known you since you've been 14, and I used to read those writings to me off your phone all the time. And I would just smile and say, I'm sitting here with a great author. Mike?
Writing for me probably saved me, because once I started writing my dissertation, I would also write what happened for the day. And at that blog or that online diary I had ended up being as long as my dissertation. I still add to it. And I addressed this before in an earlier podcast, that sometimes when you feel like you're losing your mind or you feel very confused, if you sit down and write how you feel, and then I would never read what I wrote right away.
Yeah.
And they told me in this writing class, don't worry about commas, don't worry about periods, and autocorrect is good for that to some extent. But I would go back, I went back recently because of this work, and it was 2014, and I hit the nail right on the head. I knew how I felt. I just didn't know what to do about how I felt. And maybe that's one of the things that we are looking at. The next question would be, hang on just a minute here. Well, you talked about changing priorities. We both addressed that. You can do better things with your life. And for me, I picked that one on purpose because I am doing better things with my life. I'm doing it maybe at a later time. But I talked to Ray yesterday about, and given what was going on in my body, I can't believe I was a teacher. I stood in front of 40 kids 5 times a day for 9 years. I don't know how I did that. And I would also, in my head, when the bell would ring, it was like the old Johnny Carson show when they would introduce him, here's Johnny. I would say that to myself, like I was acting when I was a teacher.
You're on stage.
I didn't know how to do anything else. I mean, I was on stage. I was, and I didn't. In retrospect, I realized that, but then I had no idea. I had an idea what I was doing. I shouldn't say that. But I had no idea. There was definite, again, a yin and a yang, and I won't say that anymore, about changing priorities and about...
I just want to make a comment on when you said maybe you're doing that later on in life. I don't think that's exactly... I think of changing priorities. I don't know, maybe you could be right or could be wrong, but what I do want to say is everything that has happened has led you to where you're at right now. So all those years that you were experiencing those things, they were necessary for you to have the depth of knowledge and understanding you have of oneself and of grief and the process of grief to be able to sit here today to teach others.
To get to this point.
To get to this point right here and right now.
And I wind it up with the 3 questions. I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I've always found this to be very successful in helping people. Where have you been? That allows people to tell their story. Whether it's something you want to share a little bit, a lot, go in depth. Number 2, where are you now? Which we talk about, you're talking about personal growth. And number 3, what does the future look like for you? Where are you going to take this knowledge and this experience? Because a lot of the things you both experienced, and me, cannot be found in a book. No. You can maybe find someone who can write about it, but unless you experience it, it doesn't impact your soul.
That's what I think is the main selling point, or the best thing about what we're doing here, is we're adding real life experience to, I don't want to say book knowledge. Ray was a guidance counselor for 30 plus years. I've been doing this work for 30 plus years. And we lived it. There's no, you can be, it's like, do you have to be a good baseball player to be a good baseball coach? And I don't think so. You can learn about the game and you can teach the game.
What you're saying is there's no template.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. And the next point about establishing a new path for my life, that's what I did. That's what I'm doing right now. The path is still under construction. And before we started here today, we talked about how I love doing this because it gives purpose, but it also just makes me feel good. It feels good to let go of some of this stuff. It feels good to talk about some of this stuff. And I'm not embarrassed by anything. And you're exactly right. Everything that happened in my life led me to here. And I actually wrote about that one time. I wouldn't change anything that happened to me. No, not one thing. Because it's isn't that the butterfly effect? If you change one thing, everything's different. It was a movie with Ashton Kutcher. It was really a good movie about, he tried to go back and change the past. And when he would go back to the future, it was completely different. And it was one little thing.
Yeah.
So, and I can do better things with my life. You are. Ray is. I am. I just, I have to interject this right now. I went to the suicide walk on Sunday, and there were 6,000 people there. And there were people walking around with signs of their lost ones. And I'm not saying it was like a celebration in terms of talking about a new path for your life. It's like changing tribes. I felt like I was home when I went there Sunday. And I was talking to these people, can I please give out my card? I ended up talking to them for half an hour. And they knew, and that's how come I know I'm in the right place. And that's how come this path I'm on right now, I'm enjoying it. It's wonderful. My feet never get tired, metaphorically. And I'm doing better things with my life. That's my deal right now. And I know the last one, and you can talk more, I'm more willing to express my emotions. You do the same thing. I like when you do that. I like that you read that poem.
Thank you. Yeah.
Get a copyright on that. We'll put it up on the Hope House website because I think that's. And then we'll invite people out there because there's so many other brilliant writers like yourself who aren't published, who people don't know about, and for whatever reason they keep their writings to themselves, which is their prerogative. But I think a lot of that time you're given that gift to help others. So once you share that gift, that part of you that helps others, and maybe there's one person today watching this podcast that said, boy, that young woman really made some good points on what she said. And to follow up, I'm not the same person I was before the trauma, before the accident, before the suicide, before the death. I'm not the same person. And how do you adjust your life to the new person that you are?
That's the book we both read called Women, about, again, just a quick reminder about this woman who was in Vietnam. It's a story about her. She was a nurse, much like a MASH nurse would be. And when she came back, she was traumatized to no end and PTSD'd to no end. And her big breakthrough was when the therapist said, don't ever try to be that person you were before you went to Vietnam, because you'll never be that person again.
Speaking of Vietnam, if I could just throw a plug in there. Today is Friday, September 21st. On
20th,
Monday the 23rd.
Today's the 20th.
Today's the 20th, I'm sorry. On Monday the 23rd, Hope House will be helping a Wounded Warriors golf outing out at Randall Oaks Golf Course
In Dundee Township.
So if you're out there, come by and say hello to us or make a donation to the Wounded Warriors. There'll be a significant number of Vietnam vets, and they'll have many Wounded Warriors there. That's part of our mission, part of our charge. What we want to do is help veterans, help first responders, and again, always with my school background, helping adolescents and young adults, anybody who has problems with making some choices about life. So that's a plug. Sorry, but
That's
I thought
all
we should
right.
put that in there.
When I went to that suicide walk on Sunday, again, 6,000 people were there. I thought there was going to be 20. And it's evidently they have it every year. I'm relatively new to this field in terms of what we're doing here. So I heard about it, but I never went to it. And the first time I went to see the Grateful Dead was a long time ago, and it was at the Uptown Theater. There were 3,000 people there, maybe. The last time I saw the Grateful Dead was in Soldier Field, and there were 95,000 people, or 90,000 people there. That's what I think we're doing here. It's akin to that. There's a lot of people out there, 6,000, that have had what we're having. And to me, it was amazing. And it's like, you don't have to be ashamed. You don't be sad, be whatever. Well, you can be whatever you want. But it was just so enriching. It was so invigorating to be around these people. And there's a lot of help available. All these tents were set up, so you can go talk to the people, the therapists and whoever that were there. It was amazing. And again, we're not getting off the subject at all. It's establishing a new path for my life. That was another one. It wasn't a fork in the road. It made the road wider for me. I loved it. And that new tribe, again, I called Ray. I was like a giddy little schoolgirl. I was like, I can't believe where I'm at. This is unreal. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And it was very refreshing, and it makes you feel like you're not nuts.
Well, you're old enough and at the age where you want to share that and help others.
Yes.
You're at the age where you got career, you just got married, you got a lot of stuff going on, and I never want to put any guilt on you, but you got a lot to say. And I think you got to find the vehicle to say that. Podcast, tremendous. Putting a blog out, putting stuff on the website for us. I think you have a lot to say that can help people. And that's the only reason we do this, was we're here to help others based on that Martin Luther King comment. What else are we here for other than to help each other?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's true. And that's validation.
Yeah.
He meant it.
Yeah.
I just think that, yes, 1990s at some point, I was trying to find community. I was trying to find a tribe, and I went to this Al-Anon meeting, and I just sat there, and this woman came up to me. I don't know how old I was, a lot younger than I am now. And she said, "Thank God you're here now. You didn't wait so long like I did." She was an older lady. She had to be in her 60s, late 60s. And I'll never forget, well, obviously I never forgot what she said. And I think that's what Ray is saying to you. It doesn't take that long. Like, say, for example, Paige, write something for Chase. Jesus.
Let's just throw this in there. We've been working with Chase Heidner for almost 13 weeks now on the podcast. And Mike, who has been diagnosed with CRS, can't remember stuff, keeps calling her Paige.
I'm looking at her name on my screen.
Yeah,
it says
so
Chase.
funny.
I don't. Anyway, that's that. I am more willing to express my emotions. Do you feel that way in terms of emotional recovery, progress? Do you find it? You really expressed yourself well 1 or 2 podcasts ago when you talked about your experience. That's hard to do. You teared up, and I'm not trying to embarrass you or anything like that. But you were talking from your heart.
Yeah, I was. In the beginning, it's a whole process. Prior to any trauma, I didn't really talk about my emotion at all. Period. It just existed inside of me and on note paper through my poetry and stuff like that, just for myself. Afterwards, there was no control right after. And a lot of anger, all the stages of grief, a lot of anger for me specifically, because in my opinion, I believe that, there's not really such a thing as just anger. It stems from something, either frustration or the big one is sadness.
I agree.
And I felt uncomfortable expressing sadness, so I felt more comfortable expressing anger. And that was all like, uncontrollable emotion. And I think a pivotal point for me when I finally was like, I need to get control over these uncontrollable emotions, was when I got so mad one time that I pushed all of the, papers off the desk of my mom's desk. And she looked at me and she said, like, why would you do that? And in that moment, it's like the world stood still and I came back to reality and I realized I was hurting the people that I love outside of just what the pain that I was feeling inside. And that felt all the more worse. And that's when I realized, okay, this is a pivotal point in the uncontrollable emotion, to start working on regulating it.
Isn't it empowering when you're feeling that angry and you're feeling that out of control, that you can make other people feel bad around you? Because that makes, in a sense, makes you feel better, that now somebody else feels bad too. You just rang a bell in me that I'll have to sit down and think about it. But, why are people so angry? Or why was I so angry? Or why was I so sarcastic and so mean sometimes to people? Because, first for me, it was a defense mechanism. And, I would hide it and say, I'm just being satirical. I'm just being like Monty Python humor or National Lampoon humor. But it wasn't. It was mean. And I knew exactly where to go because the people I was talking to, I knew very well. And it did. It made me feel like, well, at least I'm a little bit up here when your self-esteem is really in the gutter. Mm-hmm. I just, it's Judy always says, my wife always says that when bullies are bullies because they're really sad. And then,
she gets that for the little kids too.
Oh yeah,
that's where she learned that.
Yeah,
there's something. I'm not a big. I am a big YouTube guy. I love watching good stuff. But there's something I just saw 2 nights ago when I was looking for some answers on anger, and it's. I think it's titled "The 7 Buddhist Views on Anger." If you get a chance to look at it. It's phenomenal. It's a 26-minute piece. I probably watched it the last 2-3 nights in a row because it really makes sense, because there's the old, I think it's Freudian, I'm not sure, but the old depression is anger turned within. You're angry with the world, so you turn it in on yourself. And then you have the ancillary people who you turn it on, the people you love, because sometimes you're the worst on the people you love than people that cut you off in the street. So there's an interesting thing on anger. Let me get back to one question for both of you. What validates you in your decision-making to move from before the incident to after? What kinds of things validated you? You mentioned the therapy, but to help other people who are watching this, what can people do to help others validate themselves?
If I go back to the beginning of this whole process, alcohol did. When I would go out drinking, I was on a level playing field with everybody. And then all of a sudden that wasn't working anymore. And I'm not saying I'm not talking about alcoholism. I'm just talking about when I would go out a lot, or I would go to a concert, and everybody's the same at a concert. And that's beginning caveman days.
So now, at this point in the road of your life, you're not doing the alcohol and all the other stuff anymore.
I drink, but I don't.
Yeah, what's taking the place of that to help you validate, to help others help you validate what you're doing is you're on the right path?
Just learning about myself, expressing my emotions, being able to talk to somebody. It took a while to trust myself. I had to validate myself. And I had no idea. I didn't even know what validation was until 3 weeks ago. I mean, there's these terms. Ray's going to ask a question later on about when I was writing my dissertation, how would it be different now? I have names for a lot of things now. Disassociation,
Dissociation, post-traumatic stress.
Validation. I was talking to somebody. If I hit a golf ball 300 yards right down the middle, and if 3 guys didn't say nice shot, the next 6 shots I made were out of bounds. It was like a metaphor with me. I needed that.
Or let's make it more personal with our situation here. We've skipped 2 weeks for a number of reasons. We took a break from it.
Mm-hmm.
Your thought process was, oh my God, what did we do wrong to
she hates
exit Chase? No. How did we interfere with her family, with her life? He thought of everything out here where it's like, you know what? Yeah. They're going to Baltimore.
I hate Paige.
They're going to Baltimore.
Yeah, and another guy that didn't call us back right away, his phone was dead.
Yeah.
And we're like, he doesn't want to do this anymore. We went through, and I said to Ray the other day, I go, we were wrong every single time.
Yeah.
And to be able to know that and admit that is huge. It's just it's what I do, and I didn't.
Let's return to the validation for you, Chase.
Yeah.
What validated?
I was worried about that, by the way.
About not. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I was like,
we'll take care of it. Don't worry. A validation pain. Yeah.
What kinds of things were validating in your life? Your support system?
Yes. So I just want to be, because you said to help others, to help other grieving people. I just want to be wary with that, because I've seen a lot of people on, social media platforms who are also grieving be like, this is not helpful when you ask me how I am. Obviously, blah, blah, blah. It's very different. And I think the best advice I can give for how to validate somebody is to kind of be self-aware about what your your relationship is with that person. Like how close are you with that person? How can you read them, from a gut level? Because my closest friends are the only ones who knew exactly what to say, because they knew me better than anybody else. But people on, the outside, they would say stupid stuff, and I would just, me, the type of person, it rolls off of me because they're not the closest person to me.
I think of the craziest things said at wakes when you're in line and people are saying stuff. And the one that drives me nuts, I would just like to reach out and punch the person, is, oh, he's in a better place. How do you know he's in a better place? What if there is another better place? If you don't believe in higher power, what if this is just it? Don't say that. Or, enjoy the 28 years you had with him. Well, that doesn't cut it. That's not a Band-Aid for a heart attack.
Well, that's
people just say they mean well, but some of the things they say are so out of line and out of context. You'd like to slap them and say, dude, just realize what you said. You may have discounted this kid's whole life or this person's older life. It's frustrating. That's why I mentioned that book 3 podcasts ago. It's okay to be not okay. Get that book. Anybody out there, it's a tremendous book.
Go
ahead.
What you just talked about reminds me of when a family friend had taken himself out at a very young age, and they put a sign up. I said this before prior. They put a sign up outside the wake place. Don't tell her if anybody can get through this. You can. You're strong. Don't say that to her. She's grieving. She's insanely sad.
The best thing to say, and I found it in a book, but it makes so much sense. How can I help you through this process? Or what can I do to help you in this process? Not through it. It's up to you to get through it. What can I do to help? Phone call? Go out for pizza? Want to come over to my house and rant and break some dishes? What can I do to help? Because anything else you say, it's such an empty feeling for the person who's hearing it. There really is.
Ray, you're good at that. You walk the walk when you say that. You might not come over and do the dishes at my house, but anyway. But you show up, and that's a big thing too. When you were talking about your friends, one of the changes when I first. Oh wait, stop. I'm not trying to cure anybody. If you talk to people and they're going to try to cure how you feel, I don't listen anymore. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know. Your friends know you, and they try to help you, but they don't try to cure you. And
you can't fix grief. You can't fix it. It's up to the person going through it, a process of figuring out the process.
And that's where the University of Uganda in my life is closed. That school went out of business. People would always say that you got to do this, you got to do that, and then when you don't do it, you feel even worse.
Yeah, so it was infuriating that you have to get out of bed, you have to go to school, you have to do that, you have to you have to. That was a big no in my experience.
Yeah,
my own personal. It might be helpful for somebody else, but it wasn't for me. That's for sure.
I just had this thought that the three of us chatting like this it's such a wide range of experience. It's really cool because it's not just two old men talking. It's you're adding your input to where you're at in your life. I love that.
Or life experiences.
Yes, because
they're young life, but you've had some pretty intense experiences and growth moments.
And
without a doubt.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said without a doubt.
I was looking at my validation stuff before we started talking yesterday. I thought of you because one of the things in the article said when parents tell their kids, you shouldn't be sad, look at what you have. You said that last podcast, if you remember. I remember.
My parents didn't say that.
I'm just saying a parent.
Okay.
A parent will say that, and they might not even mean anything by it, but it's telling the kid, you're not validating that the kid's just sad or the kid
you're
might
not
feel.
Validating the feeling.
Yeah,
exactly.
And how huge it is. And if you grow up like that, how it can really affect you as an adult because now you don't trust your feelings. You've been told all your life that's wrong. And so it's interesting. And again, that validation thing was huge with me. I just didn't realize I'm like a validation addict. I need it. And you don't have to walk around behind me all day and say, you're great, you're great, you're great. I just need it sometimes. And because I need it, I can say, am I okay? I can ask you, and I know you mean it, whatever the answer would be. And that's huge in terms of healing, in my opinion.
There's an old story about the days of Rome where the conquering hero would come in on his chariot. The place would go nuts, but he always had a person behind him saying, fame is fleeting, to try to keep him grounded, to validate that, you're much more than this great conquering, but you're much less for the people.
Ray's been in coaching forever, and we were talking about one time in high school, like not at band camp, but one time in high school. My last game junior year, I got 5 hits. I went 5 for 6. I had the game of my life. And after the game was over, the custom was to go sit out in the outfield, and the coach would circle and tell us whatever. And the first thing out of the coach's mouth was, you didn't get the 6th hit because you swung at a bad pitch. He didn't say, way to go, you got 5 hits. And talk about invalidation. I had the game of my life. And it must mean something because I remember that. That was 100 years ago.
That was 50-some years ago.
Yeah, Ray
look how important it was. Yeah,
Ray was in the circle. It was. I couldn't believe he said that.
And you remember that negative validation has stuck with you since you graduated high school.
It's I don't understand sometimes. It's not an offshoot. It is an offshoot. When coaches always say we have more work to do. Well, what about the work you just did? I mean, a team can win 40-10, and we're still not good enough. I mean, I don't understand that philosophy. It's a motivating philosophy, but how is that received? That no matter what I do, it's not enough.
Well, I think that goes back to therapy too. When is enough? Yeah. How much? Some people spend their whole life and thousands of dollars looking for that answer and bouncing from therapist to therapist. A lot of people that bounce from therapist to therapist are just trying to find a therapist that agrees with them. And then, what a great therapist. She's super. Yeah, because she agreed with everything you said, even though you may be off-center, shall we say. We try to use professional terms in this podcast, even though Mike said take himself out earlier. We didn't mean to be insensitive with that, but you know what we're trying to say.
Yes. These are turning into conversations which are really, really, really nice. They're very therapeutic for me. I always feel better when we're done or being done or after we're done.
And the unspoken part of this is, I always walk away from this saying, did we help somebody today?
Absolutely.
If there's just one person we helped, we did our job. And if that person can help somebody else, that's just like paying it forward. The old concept of paying it forward. She went through what she went through, he went through to get to this stage in their life. Younger, older, but all those experiences prepared them to be where they are today. Or they could be in a completely different spot. You could be struggling with alcoholism and whatever else that you use to medicate, but you haven't. You made that change. Now you validate yourself with things that you do, which is really important.
When I spoke about alcohol before, I want to go back to that for a minute. Part of that, I would walk into a room and I would say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to talk to everybody in the room? How am I going to be a party guy? How am I going to... And it wore on me so much that the only way I could get that feeling out of me was to have some beer or have some whatever I have. But it was more of a... And I spoke about this multiple times. That's when I realized I was doing... It wasn't the right thing to do. Like if we were going to go out to dinner, the three of us, and old Mike would be like, how am I going to sit at the dinner table with these guys? You guys know everything. I don't know anything. And that was very real for me. So I wouldn't go to dinner. Or, I'd show up 3 cocktails later or whatever, just to try to take this edge off. And the edge off is what I've learned.
And a lot of people do that. They self-isolate because they don't feel that they're good enough, or they don't feel that they fit in, which they do. But it's just a matter of having the confidence to be there.
I didn't go to a wedding in Ohio because I go, how am I going to last 3 days with these guys? I can't do it. And so I feigned illness. And that was 30 years ago. But see, it's funny how things stick in your brain. And that's what we're here to talk about.
He can't find his keys, but he can remember what happened when he was 18 years old at Hanson Park in the middle of a circle with Paul Camastro, God bless him.
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys are just having me think a lot. If I'm being a little
Go ahead. It's your time now. We've been babbling. Now you go.
No, not at all. Just a lot of thoughts as you guys are speaking, because it's, I experience the same thing. I kind of will chalk it up to a little bit of social anxiety.
Yeah.
And, that's also because it's like, how do I relate to these people when, internally we're completely different people. We're on completely different wavelengths, but I still like this person. I still want to be their friends. They're still good people, but how can I bring myself to that level? And, the answer was alcohol, right?
That's a lot easier said than done. How can I bring myself to this level? How can I just old me show up and be okay? I battled that for a really long time. To do this and to talk like this, we had a conversation yesterday where we did not agree. And the proudest moment is I argued with him. And that's huge for me, that I would just, okay, right. And so it's amazing. That's what this work is about. I don't really use that word. That's what this is about. And I like it. I feel safe here. I feel we can, if I didn't feel safe, I don't know, someday 1 million people might watch this. And I bared my soul. And
right.
So that's the way it goes,
Something you had talked about before, and I have my cat meowing at me. He goes, hello? Hello?
Well, it's going to be Halloween season soon, so that fits right in.
Right. Actually, so something just to go back to the drinking and whatnot and the feeling internally. I think a lot of the times I would also do that as well, is because you feel alone in a crowded room.
Yes.
Because nobody can feel what you feel on the inside, and you battle between, is it better to just be alone and by yourself in the room, or alone in a crowded room? And for me, it was alone in a crowded room always felt worse. And I was talking to a friend of mine who, her and her husband are kind of struggling a little bit. He moved here to the States from a completely different country, and he's just going through this depression. There's no other way to say it. And back to what you're saying, where it's like about how we talked about last podcast or 2 podcasts ago about how am I allowed to be sad when look around me, what's there to be sad about? And he was kind of feeling that way. He's like, look at this house, look at this land, look at all these beautiful things, my beautiful wife, my beautiful daughter, and I have nothing to be sad about. I have a job, I have all this stuff, so why the heck am I sad? And I think that's such a detrimental thought, because I had said to her, it sounds like he's alone in a crowded room, coming from a completely different country, not being able to relate to anybody in the way, a completely different culture, right? And she had said to me, I think you hit the nail on the head. So I think part of, suicide and depression is that constant feeling of being alone in a crowded room.
I've opened up to some people, I've known for a very long time, and told them how I felt. And they said, I never would have guessed that about you. I internalized it so well. And I internalized it through comedy or...
self-deprecating humor.
Yeah, self-deprecating humor. I was great at that. It was the Rodney Dangerfield before there was one. And a friend of mine from 8th grade said I had no idea. And I'm like, well, yeah. And at every stage of my life, because I didn't take care of it earlier on, but I didn't know how to take care of it, it grows. And then all of a sudden it's like this. You can't see my hands, but it's pretty big. And then it becomes somewhat overwhelming. And I can see where people use drugs, alcohol, or other forms of addiction to overcome those feelings, because that's the only thing that makes you feel good, is what you're addicted to, whether that be, it could be anything. And that's not a good thing sometimes.
It's almost like that addiction is how you maintain that identity that you've been falsifying all these years.
Absolutely.
That's good word to use, falsifying. What you guys are talking about, too, there's a concept in Lakota and the culture that you two are living it. They call it caring medicine. You guys carry a lot of good medicine, ability to help other people. You, Mr. Padge. Yeah, I've been blessed to have it too. But it's like, I don't have social anxiety, but I don't want to be around people who want to talk about their vacation or going to Cancun or, I got another one of these. I'm not into collecting stuff. My wife might be different about that, but I don't want to be talking about the mundane. And you talk about this a lot. It wears on you, without a doubt. I think you and I escape differently. Well, not differently. You like your naps when you're overwhelmed.
Yes.
I like my naps any day of the week. But it's like so much builds up with helping people. I feel bad when somebody comes over and I just don't have the energy to help them. Come back tomorrow. Or had a couple of situations this week where people called, and when I just left Hope House, you're going to be there? I'd like to talk to you. And I can usually tell by the tone and the voice. But it's just being around people, like-mindedness. You use the word tribe. But of the important stuff of life, all this other stuff is just details. What's the real important stuff that what we do as a human being? The work you're doing now in the business you're in, that's part of it. But the work that you're doing today is phenomenal. This is the stuff, in my opinion, you both should be doing regularly. The View, some kind of talk thing every day where you have good people. But you both carry medicine. You carry a lot of good medicine.
I want to get to that someday, what you just said about talking to people, talking to groups, talking to kids in school. They would relate to you a little bit more than me, or maybe Ray, because I'm older, and you're more fun to look at than I am. But kids are kids. And so I think it would be important. That's what I want to do. These are all stepping stones right now, these podcasts. That's why I like these podcasts. Because we're learning how to interact with each other. Mm-hmm. We're getting some of our own stuff out over the airwaves, which really helps. Because again, a couple of things I brought up, it resonated with me, what you said. And especially the part about, look what I have. Or how can I feel bad because of where I live and all that sort of thing. I always looked at that whenever I went to someone's house. I never had a house. I always rented. And I always felt it was like, it made me feel bad doubly. What did I do wrong that I don't have this house? And I didn't do anything wrong. I chose to teach school and didn't make whatever. I just didn't choose this lucrative career because it never appealed to me. I get more of a buzz from helping people than I did from money. But it's not that, and I'm not mad at anybody that has it. I used to be, how dare you flaunt this? How dare you have a car like this? I would internalize that. But what I was really saying is, what did I do wrong that I don't have that? And after all this time, the answer is nothing. It's just the way it's just the way it goes. And I chose what I wanted to do. I'm choosing this for that. It's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm with someone right now who gets me, and we think alike. And that's so helpful to come home from, how did the podcast go, or whatever. It's really, really a nice thing. And Ray's going to ask, you'll ask it when you ask it, but yesterday was so important to me because we didn't disagree. We just had different opinions. And I got wrapped up in this thing.
Well, let's get into that.
Okay.
What did you say first?
Uh-oh.
No, it's not going to be talk radio. I wrote it down. I said, people need help with, because I was talking about a situation in my personal life with a friend I know.
I think you said people need to know where to go for help.
And he said they should know.
They should know. With all the TV advertisements, everything on mental health, every public access announcement, every commercial, you can find spots to go. Because people watch TV. They don't read anymore. I don't think a lot of people do.
When he said that, I thought it was the most insensitive thing I've ever heard in my life. And I go, how could you say that? Some people just don't know. And he goes, yeah, they do. No, they don't. It was one of those things. And
then I extrapolated a little bit by saying they know, but they don't really want to know because they're afraid to go get help. It's hard. It's hard. What you two did, now throw it always back on you two. It's hard work what you did. You could have easily stayed in bed and been drunk all day and doing your thing. That's hard work to get out of that. Some people don't want to. We talked about this 7 podcasts ago, and you both had great answers. They don't want to do the work. The work is hard because you're going to uncover some layers. It's like peeling that onion. You're going to uncover some layers that you don't really like to see. Me too. I mean, I have layers. I got warts. Jesus, I look at some things like there's that Bill Burr, a comedian, where like when you get to heaven and God's going to put in the VCR for your life, and he's going to say, what the hell were you thinking here, man? What is this? And I think everybody has those moments. So I guess if we can forgive ourselves and move on.
Well, when the dust settled, I started to make some notes, and I wrote down in my notes.
He was steaming at me yesterday.
I gave the finger the phone and all that. And then I thought about what he said, and I thought about what I said. And he's right in a lot of ways. If people can go, my metaphor, my analogy is, if people can go in the worst area of the world and find heroin, why can't they find a therapist? And that's a good point.
Because they want heroin.
They want heroin, but they don't want a therapist. And the excuses of it costs too much, or else you lie to yourself. I wrote that down. Why do we lie to ourselves? That's why. Everything's fine. My son's an alcoholic. My daughter's married 12 times, but everything's great. And but getting back to the point was, I learned how to listen, and that's called reflexivity or reflexive behavior. He wasn't wrong in what he said. I didn't agree with it. I thought it was an insensitive thing to say that some people really don't know. But
I've been accused of being insensitive sometimes. No, seriously, and that's something I try to work on. But it's just like you want to grab the person and say, "Hey, wake up, dude! You're sabotaging the heck out of yourself. You tell me you want to quit drugs and drinking, but what do you do on Thursday afternoon?
That's right.
You go down to the Eisenhower and Independence Boulevard. You pick up your heroin and you go back home.
Yeah,
come on. Why are you in that quicksand or that quagmire where you say you want to get out, but you just keep sinking deeper and deeper into it? What is it going to take? Do you need to face that moment that moment of truth just before you bottom out, the bottom of the tornado. It's just like, my God, how much worse can it get? What do you need to do that? And life is too short. You got to start handling it. Even though life is the longest thing we do, it's still too short. So unless you start handling that early, it's just going to be a constant battle. Getting up every day, doing your thing, going through the routine. Mine was always medicated by the kids I talked to. I look forward, I forget what TV show it was. You're never going to know what walks through that door. There'd be comical things we'd talk and laugh for a while, and then there'd be dead serious things, or we'd have a suicide at school. You never knew what happened, so that always kept me on my toes, and it helped me help them.
The best thing that happened to me out of this is that we're here right now. I didn't call them and say I quit the podcast. I learned that it was a great learning experience. And that's what's so good about, I'm not trying to I'm curing myself. Ray had a different opinion than I did. That's all he did. He didn't take my money. You know, all my car windows were intact this morning. Nobody.
You're old and you learn. Let's turn it on the young one here. And I don't know if this is in your plan or not. If it is, God bless you. If not, that's right. But let's say down the road, 10 years, you have 2 or 3 children. What do you want them to learn from you, or what do you want them to learn about life?
Well,
and you can always tell when I don't prep her with the question, because she sighs, and then she goes, well. So you know that it's not scripted. Go ahead.
Right? So, well, I guess regardless whether my children or somebody else's children or just, children of the world, I guess what I would want for them is what I would want for everybody, adult and child and everybody in between, is to find their purpose in this life. And it's not an easy task to do, but I want them to go through the processes of getting to a fulfillment of their purpose, because it's all encompassing, right? In my opinion, in my belief of what your purpose may be. To be self-aware enough to really learn about oneself, because I believe every single thing that you're passionate about, because there's many different passions, and sorry if I said this prior, because this is something I say a lot, but all the passions, all accumulated, and all the knowledge that you accumulate within those passions, because passion is something that you don't really need that much motivation for. Sure, here and there when you hit roadblocks, but it's something that you thirst for. So many people go through this life doing things that they don't really care about just because they're motivated by, a roof over their head, or, a paycheck, or a nice car, or whatever it may be, rather than what they were meant to do here in this world. And if everybody in this entire world did what they were meant to do, I mean, if that's your purpose in life, there's nobody else that can do it better than you. So what would society look like if we all, worked towards our purposes, took our passions into consideration, took a moment to look, to care about how we feel on the inside, to identify our issue, what we're good at, right? So often people want to be humble and be like, oh yeah, I'm all right. No, just speak up about it. This is what I'm good at, and this is what you're good at. And, maybe we can put our heads together to achieve these things. There's a lot of different things. I just feel as though passion and purpose, and a sense of passion, a sense of purpose is really correlated with happiness.
You bring up a good question, and I don't know if there's an answer. Does the passion drive the purpose, or does the purpose drive the passion?
I've thought about that before.
I don't know if there's an answer for that, because I think they might be two of the same thing. I don't know. That's a good point. First time we've ever talked about this, or first time I remember. We may have talked about this when you were 15, but again.
It's really funny. He asked you that question, and there's no accidents in this world, because yesterday I went through about 12 pages of validation, and I picked this paragraph, and it says, not feeling validated can have childhood roots. The mother who doles out tough love in a knee-jerk fashion, meaning just, shut up, for goodness sakes, may be invalidating the emotions of their child. The mother ends up rejecting her child's feelings and convinces him or her that his feelings are wrong and not viable. This can damage a child's emotional world. He may learn to distrust himself and discount how he feels. And if you're going to raise a kid, as you just talked about, that would be an important thing to validate. You know, how are there any artists in the world? How are there any actors in the world? When your 5-year-old's dressed up like Peter Pan, and you might go, oh, geez, you know, not the stereotype, but you know what I mean. When he's an actor, he likes that, or he plays music, or he writes poetry or something like that. It's important. If you don't validate that, you should be at Weber. Remember, Ray? Everybody, if you didn't go to college, you were going to be a garbage man.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with being a garbage man?
Who made good money and had a good pension.
Yeah.
Everybody I know that didn't go to college is retired, or went in the trades per se, which was a big no-no in our college prep high school.
And I think that's coming back too. They're talking about that in the literature, where we're sending so many kids to college nowadays who aren't prepared. They're not emotionally ready for college. And they come back, junior college, work, whatever. Nothing wrong with junior college. That's important. But if they go into the trades, there's a sense of purpose and a sense of fixing something. Mm-hmm. I love that. I can't fix anything. Ask my family. I can break stuff. Mm-hmm. Very good at that. But in terms of electricity, plumbing, bricks, whatever, and when I do attempt something and do fix it, it's like, what a great sense of purpose. I did it. So those guys in the trades that do that can pour cement all day and get down and finish it. There's a lot to their day. They're making a contribution, and that's their passion too, is to make something beautiful and to leave something as part of their legacy.
Ironically, that's how painting was for me.
Oh, without a doubt. Painting got you through the rough 30 years.
I went somewhere and when I was done, the place looked better when I left than when I got there. I did restaurants. I did all kinds of things, and the satisfaction I got from what we're talking about was indescribable. And at that point in time, I had kind of had enough of the classroom and kids and the classroom management, I should say, more than anything else. Mm-hmm. But what I just read really resonated with me. That's how you want to raise your kids.
And they don't teach that anywhere.
No.
You got family, this class. The most important stuff schools don't teach, which is another podcast, but some of the most important lessons schools does not teach. And we need to start doing that. We need to start looking at different ways to help these kids learn the really important things in life, especially out here when it's just, oh, we got a Vespa or we got a Thispa or whatever. It's the material stuff just get in the way. It creates like a big wall.
It does.
You can't see out the real world because you got so much stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, George Carlin's routine on stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You could take away all my stuff, but you leave my wife, my daughter, my dog is gone now, but you take away those three things, I'm in bad shape. And that's important. People are distracted by, okay, where are we going now? What are we doing? Or the people that always have to be acknowledged because they support this charity. That's why there's certain people in this community who I love. You have no idea what some of these people do, and they keep it nice and quiet for veterans, for animals, for pet shelters. And to me, they're doing it for the right reason, the right reason.
Getting back to the kid thing, I have grandchildren now. I have 4 of them, and the 2 boys are 11 and 9. And it's almost, in a sense, it's like a do-over, because I know all these things I didn't know as a first go-around parent. Mm. And if I could have anything back, I wish I could have some of that, because I was one of those parents. I would say these things which I didn't think were insensitive. I said what I was told. I was raised how I was raised, or raised them how I was raised.
It's just passed on generation to generation.
And now, what's it really important, and how to have enough, teaching your kids to have enough self-confidence or have enough self-worth to stand up for themselves. That's a big one with me. He was mean to you. Tell him don't be afraid to say that kind of thing. And I see that in these 2 little guys. And that's what I love that paragraph about validation, because it is so important to realize that. Ray said, when's there a time you really felt validated? When I was a sophomore baseball coach for 8 years at Weber High School, or 7, this guy who was a sophomore baseball coach at Brother Rice for like a million years, Cliff Petrak was his name. He called my house and said, I'm writing a book and I would like to get your input on sophomore baseball. I thought he had the wrong number. I mean, everybody knew who Cliff Petrak was. Yeah. And he called me. And that's, again, that was a million years ago. And that's validation and how the long-term effect can or can't be on your psyche. Because it gave me credibility that I didn't think I had as a coach. I had to hear it from somebody, but I believed him. So,
yeah, and you try to stay humble. I remember a luncheon I was at where they were talking about this great guy who did all this stuff, and an award was eventually named after him, and
it was him.
And I sat at the table with 9 new counselors, or relatively new, 1 to 3 years, and the one lady looks at me and she goes, at my name tag, she goes, "That's you?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh my God." I said, "Don't treat me any different than anybody else." I said, I was just given these gifts and I've been able to use them through Barrington High School, through all the counseling stuff that we did. So you just stay humble, because it's as soon as you get to thinking that you're a little bit bigger than who you are, the universe has a way to knock you down. I really believe the universe has so much to do with balance, so much to do with how much you can help, how it'll help you when you ask for it. We're getting way too philosophical here, but...
Well, given what you just said, I think we need to do an AI broadcast or AI podcast with you when you're not here. Your body will be there, and we can let you talk about stuff you've done, because you have an amazing career. You've had an amazing life, and you won't talk about it for whatever reason, but maybe we can AI his voice and
yeah, right.
I don't even know what AI is.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
Hour 2.
Hour 2?
2 minutes.
Okay, should we anything? Well, first of all, do we have anything else to discuss? We do, but is there anything pertinent to this issue right now? Chase?
I think I have stuff for next time because of what you just were talking about. Like, the effect of power and ego.
Sure.
And, remaining humble and the universe bringing you back down. If your head gets too big, I think that's an interesting concept and something we could talk about.
I agree. My mom was really good at that. I remember I told Ray this story 3,000 times. When I got my first cell phone, she goes, "Oh, Mr. Big Shot, you got a cell phone now." It was a freaking cell phone.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny.
But I agree. I think what I do when you air these podcasts, I go downstairs, I don't watch them, and I listen to them, and I take notes. You told me that. That's a good idea. And it gives me more stuff to talk about, based on what you just said, too. So I'm good.
Thank you for listening today. And remember, if you can go out and help one person, what's the old saying out of I think it's the Torah, the Jewish thing? Those who save one life saves mankind eternal. If you can help somebody who's in a bad spot, you're helping him or her, their family, their friends, their relatives. It's more than just one-on-one person. So go out there and do well. And as St. Paul said, worry not in doing well. God bless you. Have a good day.